Hi, my name's Gary Hopper, state rep from Ware, and welcome to another episode of Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm here with my bestest buddy, Matt Connington. What is it?
My name gets butchered quite a bit, but that was one of the most interesting because you actually added a syllable there. Would you say Conning,
Yeah,
something like that?
something like
It's Connerton.
That's Gaelic, isn't it?
I am Irish. Very good, very good. Most people don't figure out that it's an Irish name.
Yeah, I know. You just look Gaelic to me.
Not sure how to take that.
Okay. Nothing. Personal. It's personal.
Right.
Let's see. So today, I had no idea what was going on tonight. I asked a few weeks ago. It was DJ Bentoncourt, the majority leader of the House. I had roped him into coming on.
Yeah.
And something came up called school. And so I was up at the State House yesterday, and I was trying to find out where he was, and somebody texted him for me and stuff like that. So finally, about 2 o'clock this afternoon, I finally got in touch with him, and he arranged for Senator Ray White to come up and speak with us today. And thank you very much for coming at the last minute. Otherwise, we
were scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess so.
We'll be the judge of that.
Yeah.
Well, by the end of the show, we'll have determined.
Yeah,
There you go.
And so DJ said that you were quite familiar with healthcare issues and stuff like that because you've been involved in the insurance companies and things like that. But just to start off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in politics, why you really, really wanted to devote your entire year for $100?
That's always an interesting question. I've been a small business owner for about 25 years, and as you mentioned, I'm involved in health insurance kind of indirectly because I own a company that sells employee benefits. So that encompasses health insurance, dental insurance, disability insurance, and pension plans, largely to small businesses. So healthcare is a big component of that. And over the last few years, I became concerned that as the economic environment deteriorated, that
No, wait. See, the fact that he can pronounce deteriorated.
Yes.
That's qualification enough as far as I'm
Because
concerned.
that's how many deterioration? Is that what you said? Did you say
Deteriorated.
Deteriorated.
Yeah.
Same. No, so that's 6 syllables right there.
See?
There you go.
There you go. So continue.
All right. You're a
If
good
it were-
guest so
if-
far.
If it was Scrabble, I'd get a high score there.
Yeah.
But
Oh, absolutely.
I became concerned that as the economic conditions had gone downhill, that business people really needed to step up and, in my case, run for Senate. And then the other confluence that happened there is Senator Sheila Roberge, who had held that seat for 13 terms, 26 years. She was the dean of the Senate, decided to retire. So the combination of me being concerned politically, as well as the fact that the seat was open for the first time in a quarter of a century, just basically things came together, if you will, and I decided that I should step up and represent small businesses.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I know Sheila Roberge is one of the, I think we've talked about it on the show before, one of my big issues is family, in that as the family breaks down, government grows exponentially to cover it. It just has to happen. I mean, you can't allow little children to live on the streets. It's just,
Right.
we're not in Brazil, so.
Or a Dickens novel.
Yeah, this isn't. I was reading that child labor laws, and the fact that we actually had to pass child labor laws, and some of the first ones said that no children under the age of 11, I think this was England, could work for more than 8 hours in a row. Oh, isn't that revolutionary? 8 hours in a row for a kid 11 years old.
Well, I'm glad someone took a stand.
Yeah,
and
that was tough.
Yes.
Yes. We will go this far and no further. Damn it. But anyway, the family issues, and Sheila Roberge was really good. She helped me. She co-sponsored my bill to eliminate no-fault divorce for couples with minor children at least 1 or 2 times. So that's pretty courageous because it's not politically a smart move. politically smart is you stay away from all the hot button issues, you mind your own business, you smile when people's, and laugh at people's jokes and all that other stuff,
Right.
and you just keep your head low when you get reelected.
Right.
But she didn't do that. I mean, that actually, oh yeah, I wanted to mention that before it goes any further, is that's one of the things I did this week, is finally decide on who I'm supporting for president.
You did.
Yes, I know you're not going to like this, but it's actually Rick Santorum,
Okay.
for that same reason. I mean, he's taken that. Any politician can just go along, and try to get reelected.
Mm-hmm.
But when people are willing to take tough stands and take stands that are socially people aren't going to like the marriage issue. If you talk about marriage, you're alienating half the population, because 50% of them either in divorce,
Right.
have been divorced, or are the result of divorce. So,
Oh, wish they were divorced.
or wish they were divorced.
Right.
So, taking a stand like that is so politically incorrect. It shows you that somebody's more of a statesman than they are just another politician. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that tonight.
I will pay him a compliment, Santorum.
Yeah,
And I mean this sincerely. He's much too conservative for me.
yeah, I figured.
But I will say this for him. I've always thought, and not just recently, I've always thought this about him. There is something, I mean, I've never met him, but when I watch him on television, there is something genuine about him. I think he's a true believer, and I think that, I think he really does, whether I agree with it or not, I think he really does believe what he believes, and he doesn't take the road of just saying whatever is politically expedient. Someone like Romney, for example, who I don't know how you feel about him, but he says
He's
whatever,
a politician.
yeah, he says whatever is appropriate for whoever he's speaking in front of, and then 5 minutes later says the opposite. But I think Santorum, I think he's genuine, and I think he's consistent, and I do respect that about him.
Well, that's been my one of my things that I've been looking for specifically, is I want a statesman this time. We can't really afford more politicians in D.C.
Right.
That's what we've had. If anybody hasn't seen the 60 Minutes video they did last Sunday on the politicians in D.C., you have to see it. I think it's probably on CB. Google it. It's
Yeah.
all about how congressmen, senators go up there, maybe making worth, $200,000, and by the time after about 4 years they're worth $2 million,
Oh, yeah.
or $8 million, $20 million, and it's all because they have in the federal government, most employees are, if they are involved in things, have to put all their money in a blind trust that they basically have no control over. That rule, I presume, always presumed that applied to congressmen. No, they exempted themselves from that. So if they go into a closed-door hearing and hear that, they're going to pass a law that's going to hurt an industry, they can call their broker that night and say, take all my money out
sure.
of, company X,
Oh, yeah.
and next day it starts tanking, and they've saved their money, or conversely, if they know a contract's going to go out, they can throw their money in it.
The system is so corrupt.
It's so bad. So that's why I really believe we need a statesman, and I narrowed it down to people that three people for president that I thought were true statesmen, or were there for the right reason.
Yeah.
It was Santorum, Ron Paul, and Herman Cain. And that was before all this crap about girlfriends. I still don't know what's going on there.
Right.
When they start attacking people, I am always suspicious that that's just a smokescreen to try to defame somebody's character more than it is accurate. I don't know yet.
Right.
And Herman Cain, I think, is really good, but he obviously has no real political understanding, and is going to get up there and act like Craig Benson. And Craig Benson was a nice guy. He had some really great ideas, but when he got to Concord, he didn't know how to handle the situation.
Yeah.
And he choked.
Yeah.
And we can't afford that on a national level.
Right. I agree. Oh, we have a call.
Uh-oh.
Should we grab this?
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
This is Bobby. Am I on here?
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Thanks for taking my call. As far as healthcare is the topic,
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not really in favor of what Obama did. I really believe we should have had single payer, but that's beside the point. The choices we have now are either Obamacare or what I call Republicare, which falls under the acronym of healthy. And health HEALTHY stands for hope eternally and learn to heal yourself. I don't want to be disparaging. I'm bipolitical. I just wanted to, throw that out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bobby.
We'll get to that in a minute. I got to finish my train of thought because those trains go out the station. They're gone forever.
They gotta arrive on time.
Absolutely. So anyway, so I discounted Herman Cain just because I think I think he'd choke at the ever.
Yeah.
And also his 999 plan. If you really analyze it, now you're giving the federal government another way to tax you, which would be a sales tax.
Right.
And they really don't need that. You'd be taking people that are making, $20,000, $40,000 a year, and you're taxing them at 9%. So a couple that has, at the lower end of the spectrum with a couple kids and making $40,000 a year, now they got to pay a 9% income tax and a 9% sales tax on everything they buy. They've lost whatever they have. They're done.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it might simplify the tax code, but you can do that in other ways
Right.
without.
There's smarter ways to
There's
do
smarter ways to do it.
Yeah.
So Herman Cain I discounted. Ron Paul I really like. I believe that he has the integrity to do the job. But it was, and I'm going to forget his name. Who was it that said?
Uh-oh, you're having a Rick Perry moment.
Yeah, I'm having a Rick Perry moment. Who was it that said, "For evil to succeed, all is necessary, as for good men to do nothing"?
I don't remember who said that.
It was an Englishman, actually. Anyway,
yeah.
doesn't matter. It's still correct, regardless who
Yeah.
said it. And to me, that is not only true with people, and we need people out there that if you want to run for the legislature, do it. If it is also the same, and it also applies to countries. And if Ron Paul is elected, the one thing he does have almost absolute power over is foreign policy. And if the United States completely pulls back to our own shores on every front, we're going to leave a power vacuum. That power vacuum will be filled by evil.
Absolutely, I agree. He's
So-
definitely an isolationist. Or isolationist. I think I added a syllable in there. But
Yeah.
You know what I meant.
Yeah, you and me.
Now I'm adding syllables.
Nice.
It's contagious.
Yes. So anyway, that's basically how I narrowed it down, and I agree with you. Whether you agree with Santorum on everything, I think he's straight up. I think he's honest.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about tonight. I did want to talk about what Bob was talking about, which was the Obamacare, and get your thoughts on it, because what I've been told, and I haven't read the bill because I don't have a few weeks to sit down and read something, is that most of the real impact, the real negative impact of Obamacare isn't going to actually take place till after the 2012 election. I'm sure that's a coincidence. Can you tell, how much do you know about Obamacare and what
It's being phased in. The first phase of it took place in September of last year, but really the full brunt of it, the main implementation of it is January 1st, 2014. Unfortunately, I would not take the position that Bob did. He obviously is interested in a centralized type of healthcare system, whereas I would favor a free market, private delivery of the healthcare system. And so, and I would say that the effects of the Affordable Care Act are already present with us, because just the specter of what's coming down the road, I believe, has had a very chilling effect on hiring, on employment policy with companies as they contemplate the fact that, hey, I could be on the hook for either mandatory to provide health care or pay a substantial penalty for not doing so. And that's, I believe, had a chilling effect on the economy.
Yeah, I know that even my, back before they canned me at work, boy, they're smart. Anyway, we had a health care meeting earlier, I think January, and that's one thing they said it was going to cost.
Yeah.
It was going to cost them, X number of thousands of dollars, because that's of what they knew so far about Obamacare.
Right.
Per employee.
Yeah.
Which, as a employee, I'm thinking, well, that's 50 cents an hour I just lost.
Yeah.
Well, the official name, we call it Obamacare, but it's called the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And I believe that on the first two letters, there was some merit to some of the things that President Obama did. There were patient protections that were put in that, some of which may have been overdue, removing lifetime limits on policies, eliminating pre-existing conditions, things like that.
We had already done
So-
that. We had already done that in New Hampshire anyway.
Well, the point is though that nationally there's a lot of states that weren't as far along down the road as we were, and so I'll be willing to give President Obama his chops on that. But on the second half of it, the Affordable Care Act, PPACA, I don't believe that it does anything to the affordability equation. In fact, I believe it greatly harms an already out of control situation from an affordability standpoint. I think it actually exasperates that. And so that's why I think it's being heavily resisted. But what I find in Concord is when we have debates, there'll be people who will show up at hearings when we debate various issues and say, hey, look, now children get guarantee issue health insurance and no pre-existing conditions, and they point out the good features of the law that were not so heavy-handed, but they seem to be willing to overlook some of the extremely heavy-handed regulations that are looming that, like I said, I think are already beginning to really choke the market and certainly scare off employers. I deal with employers every day, day in and day out, looking at their benefit program. Just this morning, I had an appointment early this morning, and the business owner asked me, how much am I going to have to pay of my employees' health insurance when it's mandated?
Yeah. Should we grab this?
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
This is Bobby again.
Hey, Bobby.
The gentleman, I didn't catch his name at the beginning of the show, but
Senator Ray White.
Ray White?
Yes.
Okay. You were saying something about I would like a centralized healthcare thing.
Yeah, single payer.
Single payer, right. The way I look at it is, if all the monies that are going to the insurance companies, healthcare, for healthcare insurance money, that's money that's stock market money, and healthcare should not be for profit. It should be for the people everywhere around the world. And if all the monies that go to the insurance companies, you get that leech out of there. I'm sorry about using the word leech about insurance companies, but if you cut them out of the system, and the monies that they create goes to the single payer, then people would be paying less premiums and getting better health care, in my opinion. And Gary, when you were talking about that gentleman saying you didn't know who you were quoting, but I agree with that quote about the people who aren't doing anything and
Edmund Burke.
will thrive on and stuff.
Yeah, that was Edmund Burke. It was
Edmund Burke?
yes.
Okay.
But the just not not to be too argumentative, because I really don't get into that on the show, but
Right.
because I'm a wicked nice guy. And I'll be the first one to tell you that. And the only probably, but
I'm as nice as you are.
oh yeah, you want to step up anyway? So so anyway, you are familiar with? Oh man, I'm gonna mess it up again.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
You were saying your father was at the Chosin Reservoir?
Yes.
Well, I was at the West Haven VA back in '92, and I was there with a Korean vet who was at the Chosin Valley Reservoir.
Wow.
He probably served with your father.
Yep. I'm sure he did.
I just wanted to, let you know there's a little connection there.
Oh, thank you. But if you look at how the federal government, in what would be considered almost like not even a single payer system, but how poorly the federal government handles the veterans that went over to war to fight this country, do you really think the private citizens are going to get that much better treatment when we go to a federally imposed insurance plan?
I don't want to get too political about this, but my answer to you is, prior to a certain time, the health care through the VA was pretty decent. It was pretty decent. It was really pretty decent. It started getting less decent after 9/11. I'll put it that way.
Really?
Yes.
You would have thought it would have got better after 9/11.
It got better for shuffling the papers, getting people their compensation and stuff. It got good at that, but it cut back on the medical part of it.
Right.
From my own personal experience, I can't speak for across the country.
Right.
But I know there's a lot of veterans who feel the same way I do, disabled veterans now.
Well, yeah, I'm talking. That's what I mean. I mean, I've talked to a lot of veterans over the years, and the medical or help that they get from the VA is a shot in the dark. And I just
It's subpar, right?
my feeling is, if the federal government will treat the people that went over to defend it, to defend this Constitution, defend liberty, or at least that's what they were told they were doing,
Right.
and they're willing to treat those kids that way, and I call them kids because as far as I'm concerned, somebody who's 18, you hand him a gun, he's still a kid. He's just got more firepower. And you send those kids over there, they get hurt, and if you're willing to mistreat them when they get back, what's going to happen when the federal government controls everything?
Well, that's a good point. And in relation to what you're saying, the way I look at it is, if we don't treat our veterans right, or we should treat our veterans right, and if you're not going to treat them right, stop making veterans.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Warring all over the world.
We should make an attempt to stop making veterans, period, anyway, regardless of how they're treated. But I agree with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had Alessandro on here last week on your show, and
D'Alessandro?
I think he means Al Baldessaro.
Oh, Al Baldessaro. Yeah, Al Baldessaro.
Right. He was a Marine. I was in the Army, but I know a lot of Marines, and I have high respect for Marines, and I understand the Marine mentality, Semper Fi, and all that stuff. And I have nothing bad to say about Marines, but he was very knowledgeable as to the state of affairs for veterans in New Hampshire, and I'd like to meet him sometime. And he seems like a go-getter.
Yeah, he is.
He could spur me into coming out of where I've been at for forever. It's time for me to re-engage. And anyways, Ron White was talking about. I really would love to be able to go to a regular hospital and get treatment there, but I don't have insurance. I never got insurance because of the VA was my insurance. I'm service connected 100%. I'm supposed to get top quality medical treatment to begin with, so I didn't feel I needed to get extra insurance. And if the Republicans can throw something at me that'll meet my needs, not that I'm asking for a lot, but I'll jump on that wagon without even blinking an eye.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hear that Al was talking about the governor of Texas, Perry.
Perry, he's a Perry supporter.
Right, that he's very strong for the veterans, and they have a V on their cards, and they can go to any facility and get services there. I like that idea. I really do like that idea.
Didn't Bush propose something like that, and then it never happened?
Yeah, one of those deals. I think so. I know that was thrown about quite a few years ago. But.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your.
This is one last question.
Yeah.
To Ron. Ron, can you answer my question about?
I'm Ray.
But anyway, what was the?
I thought it was Ron.
Ron White's a comedian.
That's right. He's much wealthier than I am, I'm sure.
I thought I heard Ron. It was Ray White. My mistake.
Anyway, what was the question again, Bob?
Well, you're advocating for the private sector. How do I get benefit from that?
Well, candidly, Bob, you're in a government type of system as long as you're going to be covered by the VA.
Proposal will stand with you, correct? Hope eternally, and learn to heal myself. Why?
Well, again, you're in a subset of the healthcare system. The veteran system is a specialized system, somewhat like Medicare is a specialized system, somewhat like Medicaid is a specialized system.
What you're telling me is I'm like a gerbil on a wheel. You just keep running around in a circle and never get anything accomplished.
Well, here again, I would argue that as you did, the veterans' health care generally was a pretty good deal. Most veterans think that's one of the most important benefits they walked away from the military with. It's a little bit underfunded right now, but I think veterans, generally speaking, you say you've been in the system all your life. I think generally you've been happy with your care. It's only been in the last few years you felt it's deteriorated. And I will say this as well. If I go to my customers, like I do on a day-to-day basis, and I simply ask them the question, are you satisfied with your health care? Universally, they would all say yes. But then if I asked them the question, are you satisfied with the cost of your health care, universally they would all say no. I think in the United States generally we have good health care. We have probably the best health care in the world. The problem is our health care is largely unaffordable at this point.
Yeah, what is it, a seventh of our gross domestic product?
17% of our gross domestic product.
Yeah.
Ray, I'm assuming you're a politician, right?
I am
He's a state senator from Bedford.
right.
State senator as opposed to federal senator.
Correct. He doesn't make money at it.
Well, I'm honored to speak with you, and I appreciate your answer. There are no easy solutions, obviously.
No, they're not.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Hey,
right.
thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
And thanks for the pitch for Al Baldessaro. You can go on his Facebook. Invite him as a friend on Facebook, or me, and I'll hook you up with Al. Or you can go on the state website and get his email, and I'm sure we can arrange for you a chance, get you a chance to meet him. He is a really good guy, and really he was very helpful. I had a veteran in my town that was having trouble, and I said, Al, I don't know what the heck to do. I'm not a... And he
Yeah.
a couple phone calls later, he had the guy hooked up. So
Yeah.
he's awesome. He's a go-getter.
Bobby said something that kind of reminded me of something, how the way I feel about the whole healthcare issue in this country. I'm curious what you guys think. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. I'm liberal, as you know, Gary, on some things, but I'm conservative on others, and I'm conservative on fiscal issues. And my biggest frustration, going all the way back to '92, when Hillary Clinton tried to take this on and failed, is I do feel like there is a problem in this country, and I do feel like in the richest, most innovative country in the world, everyone should have health care. I truly believe that. So I agree with Democrats who say there is an issue. But what I would like is the Republican version of what health care would look like. Because I believe in the free market, and I agree, Gary, that giving it all to the government to control would be a nightmare. So I don't want a single-payer system. I want a free market-driven system where you should be able to shop online for health insurance like you would car insurance, And I think the cost of it would plummet. So I think that would be good. I think what the Republican version of what healthcare would look like, healthcare reform, would be awesome, and that's what I want as an independent. But my frustration is I feel like it will never, ever happen. We'll never, ever get it, because I feel like with only two exceptions that I know of, Huntsman and Romney, and maybe there's others that I don't know about, but I feel like the only time Republicans are interested in doing anything about health care in this country is when they have to push back against the Democrats, when they have to push back against Hillary Care, when they have to push back against Obamacare. Otherwise, I feel like Republicans don't want to talk about it, don't want to think about it, don't want to, it becomes a non-issue unless there's a reason for Republicans to say, oh, wait, we have an idea, we should do it this way.
Well, I think I can. I'd like to field that a little bit and let Ray chime in also. But if you watch that 60 Minutes thing I was advocating, you'll see where the problem is.
Yeah.
The real problem. First of all, you get two variables. One, I don't think the federal government has anything to do with this. If you look at the state of New Hampshire, we had already covered children that are underprivileged kids. There was no kid in New Hampshire that didn't have insurance, unless they didn't want it.
Right.
So that situation was actually quite well covered already in New Hampshire, and it's not a federal issue. It really isn't. Constitutionally, there's nothing in the Constitution. The Constitution says this is the scope of government, period.
Right.
Anything else that isn't written in here belongs to the states or the people.
Yeah.
That's it. So so the federal insurance shouldn't be there.
Right.
A state insurance, that way if New Hampshire does something, it's like, and Romney said this to his credit, and I agree with him. I don't know if it was being political and trying to come up with an excuse for Romney Care.
Yeah, because this dogs him, this issue. Yeah.
But he is correct when he said that if Massachusetts does state health care, they can do that under their, because that's what they're allowed to do.
Right.
But it's an entirely different animal when the federal government does it. Because if for instance, if Romney Care worked really well, New Hampshire could look at what happened in Massachusetts as a prototype and say, that's a really good idea.
Right.
That saved cost, it saved this, it did this, A, B, C, and D,
And create our own version.
and create our own version.
But it would be up to us.
Be
to do
be
that
up to
right.
us.
Yeah.
Well, even Bob is going to get his wish with our neighbor as Vermont heads down the road of single payer. They're going to be the first state to attempt that, and I think
didn't know that.
yeah, they're heading in that direction, and so that will be the first state in the country to attempt to institute a single payer system. So we'll see where that goes. But I do think Matt's criticism is somewhat correct that Republicans haven't necessarily given their vision with clarity for health care. But I would say the vision is this, and I can really give it to you in one word, and that word is transparency. I think that the problem with health care and the way the Republicans, certainly myself, would fix it is that people need to understand what things cost so they can make rational choices. You do not walk into a McDonald's where there is no menu board, where you just say, you know, I'll have a quarter pounder, a fry, and a chocolate shake, and you have no idea what the cost is. You
Right.
consume your meal, and then a bill is presented to you at the end, and you have no idea what you purchased. But healthcare is like that.
That's true.
And even if the consumer wants to find out what things cost, it's very difficult to do so. And I'll give you my own personal, true-to-life story, but I won't name the hospital, even though it's one of the two Manchester hospitals. I have two kids, and my first child was born at Hospital A in Manchester. When I had a fully insured type of plan, and so I didn't really inquire about the cost. But when I did have my second child, I was then covered under insurance that had no maternity coverage. So prior to us delivering my second child, I said, first of all, to my wife's obstetrician, I'm going to basically have an uninsured pregnancy here. How much is it going to be? And they said to me that the cost of delivering the baby and the prenatal care would be roughly $2,500. And they said to me, what you can do is start paying us a couple $100 a month as your wife goes through her term, and then by the time she delivers, you'll be just about there, and that was all great. But I went to the hospital where we were going to deliver the baby, and it happened to be the opposite hospital of the one that we had delivered my first son, by the
Hospital
way.
B.
Hospital B. And I said, how much to have a baby here? And they said, we don't know. I said, what do you mean we don't know? I said, vaginal delivery, 2 days of hospitalization, no complications, how much? We don't know. Well, when Justin, my youngest boy, was delivered, about 15, 20 days later, I was presented a bill for about $10,000. And I went to the billing department of Hospital B and said, if you had told me it was going to cost $10,000 for this non-complicated vaginal delivery, you know, no complications, I would have gone back to Hospital A and asked how much.
Yeah.
And I said, so I'm not going to pay this bill. And they said, well, Mr. White, you know, you can't not pay your bills. What are you going to do? What do you propose? And so I kind of went into used car mode, and I said, I pulled out a checkbook, literally, out of my pocket, and I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do here. If you give me the right price, I will write you a check for the cost of this delivery. But if you don't, you can try to come after me for the money, and maybe we'll work out a payment plan of $10 a month for the rest of my life or something. But I need to hear a good number.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is, I ended up negotiating roughly a 30% discount. I ended up paying about $7,000 for that delivery. My point in that story is that's what's wrong with healthcare. No
Yeah.
transparency, no ability to shop,
Right.
no consumer direction whatsoever in the market. That's a huge problem.
Absolutely.
And insurance masks that openness, and government payment masks that openness, and I think that's what's caused a big part of the hyperinflation that we've seen in healthcare over the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I know that when I'm talking to constituents, I usually use the picture your automobile if it was free to have it fixed. You know, you'd go in there and say, well, we're going to change the oil, and you just got to change last week, and you know,
Right.
we're going to do we're going to put on new tires. I know they got another 10,000 miles, but you can't be too safe. And do you need new rims with that? Yeah, all right, whatever. whatever, we don't care, you know?
Right.
It would be the same thing. You would have no clue. You'd sign the bill at the end of you'd put in your, $20 copay,
Right.
and you'd be out the door with nice new shiny tires. 'cause you
Even
wouldn't give
bringing it to basic human needs, because most people agree that healthcare is a need, something that we just can't be without. Food is a need. Well, what if we gave food away as
Right.
opposed to had to pay for it? I can tell you, I'd eat filet mignon pretty much 7 days a week.
Right, yeah.
I mean, again, you have to make choices, and unfortunately, the healthcare system, as it is constituted today, is not conducive to those choices. And I think that's very problematic. And if you introduced an element of consumerism into it, I think the market forces would at least begin to control the costs. But as Gary's point is about, I did see the 60 Minutes piece he's referenced several times. There's a lot of money in the healthcare system. There's a lot of interest, and not even all of them are medical. There's trial lawyer interest, pharmaceutical interest. You see them running ads on TV. You never saw that before. You see hospitals marketing services that are sort of kind of healthcare, sleep studies and weight loss, and I mean it's a powerful business with powerful interest, and quite frankly, I think very interested in preserving the status quo.
Yeah.
Well, you look at, I was noticing, I was just driving along today, I was noticing they putting up another pharmacy somewhere that I hadn't seen before. It seems like they put up a new pharmacy every week. Drugs is a good business.
Absolutely.
We should go into that.
Absolutely. We should talk to Ross about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, we have Ross Terrio, he's a pharmacist at CMC.
Yep.
So I said, so you're a drug dealer? But anyway.
Which he loves. You can
Yeah,
tell.
he
just
yeah,
loves
he just
that,
loves
yes.
it when we say
Oh,
that.
yes.
So, anyway, if you look at the pharmaceutical companies, there are plenty of pharmaceutical companies around the globe that would love to compete in the American market.
Sure.
They'd love to.
Absolutely.
Nope, we don't allow any imports of drugs. And they'll say it's for your safety. Now, we get our vegetables from South America. We get all kinds of stuff from China. We get our toys from China. I don't see, if we can trust South America to give us vegetables, there is no reason in the world why we can't trust India, who has some really good manufacturers of medicine, or Canada,
Yeah.
from shipping medication down. But you
Right.
know why? Buku dollars.
That's right.
And who controls it? Congress. And who needs to get reelected? Congress.
Exactly.
And that's what it's all about. It's about the
Exactly.
money. And like you said, trial lawyers. I mean, they're if you look at the cost of a procedure, they'll send you in for this test. You might see your GP and he sees a growth on your hand and says, you got an infection. What do you want me to do about it? Says, poke a hole in it. Put some ointment on it. Clean it out, you dummy. That's what he'd want to tell you.
Right.
But then there's the probability or the possibility that maybe there's like a 1 in 1,000 chance that it's some sort of cancerous growth in there. Right. So he has to have it biopsied, and then he has to send you for a CAT scan. All these procedures, because if he's wrong, his common sense isn't allowed to be factored in.
Right.
Because-
Defensive medicine.
Yeah.
Defensive medicine, and they shouldn't be practicing it.
Right.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Well, I would favor, particularly on simple procedures, quite frankly, a menu board approach. I think that providers need to clearly disclose the pricing of procedures. People should realize, in my office, again, I sell employee benefits. I'll get a phone call where a customer will say, I'm angry at XYZ insurance company. What's the matter? Well, I want a MRI, but the insurance company wants me to have an X-ray. I'll say, well, tell me what happened. Well, I was playing tennis, I sprained my knee, I want an MRI. What makes you think you need an MRI? Well, if Mo Vaughn hurts his knee, he gets an MRI. I want an MRI. Well, if you were paying for it and the X-ray is $100 and the MRI is, $2,000, you'd probably start with the X-ray. But if the insurance company's paying for it, then you want the best technology immediately.
Right.
Here again, it's that whole thing about transparency. If you don't see the cost, you want what you think you need, And since cost is not an issue, you're going to go for the high dollar procedure.
Right.
Now, is there anything in because I agree with you. I remember, I'm not going to tell you the state rep that said this to me, but it took me a while to get it because it was so foreign to me. And I asked the same question when I was get this
Should
one.
we grab
I don't
this
know what I'm
really
talking
quick?
about anyway, so go ahead.
Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
This is Bobby again. I was kind of listening to Ray for a moment here.
Bobby, can you turn down your TV, please? We're getting
Yeah, I just wanted to hear what he was saying so I could catch up, but it's kind of hard to hang on with this stuff. Talking about MRIs, the federal government was the first ones to have MRIs, and they had them in West Haven back in '92. The Republicans, we're all familiar with Grover Norquist, I believe. I hope.
Oh, yes, he's a very powerful man in the Republican Party, even though he's never held office.
Right. Well, I think he's the one who quoted he wanted to starve the beast so you can get it so small that you can drown it in a bathtub.
Right.
Talking about the government.
About the federal government.
That's a
yeah.
very good idea.
Well, that scares me to the bone. It scares me to the bone because in reality the government does do useful things. I mean, if I had it my way, I would say to the Tea Party people, well, if you're so much against the government, boycott. So that you wouldn't be able to use the streets. You wouldn't be able to use anything in the country because the government, as they say, it's in our lives all the way around. There's no doubt about that. And a lot of things you guys are talking about. How do we make those changes? How do we make it so we can have these imports coming in? Or we all know the corruption. We all are aware of the corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Today they were on C-SPAN. They were having the Senate, the House was not interrogating, but they had CEOs from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were testifying before Congress. And I learned today that two former Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae CEOs made more money in 1 year than both houses of Congress and the president together. Now, there's something wrong there. There's something wrong there. You know it, I know it.
Yeah.
How do we change those things? Is what, that we don't need to drown the government in the bathtub.
Well,
that is crazy. That is insane.
Gary's really getting on his hand grenade now. You're getting him going, Bob. I'm starting to get nervous.
Well, that's too bad. We cannot function without a government. We have to have some kind of government. You're talking about an analogy of cars. Well, taxes are like tires on a car. If you keep your tires balanced, well inflated, and properly aligned, they're going to run you a lot longer than if you throw your dollars out the window and you race around and you're just wasting everything. The way I look at it, the way the politicians are today, because of the squeeze of the economy, they want to take a lug nut off of every wheel so there's less weight on the car. They threw out all the chairs and all the seats.
No.
It's down to basically a steering wheel with brakes and 4 lug nuts per tire. That is not a solution either.
No, well,
let's really talk about things that are really what we mean to say. Let's not just throw banter out there just for the fiery effect.
No.
Let's talk
Hey,
about finding real solutions.
yeah, I think we are talking about real solutions, Bob.
Well, you are.
But anyway, thank you for the call, sir. But,
All right. Okay. Thanks.
They are real solutions. I think we've already covered one, which is the thing, like he said, the federal government. If the federal government controls everything, the original Constitution was supposed to have a minimal federal government, with the states having almost like partners in this arrangement.
Yeah.
And right now they're not. The federal government dictates almost everything to us, including, like I said a few shows ago, how they dictated to us that we had to impose a saltwater fishing license.
That's right. I remember you talking about that.
And it's like that on, and that's just a committee that I'm associated with.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, we are talking about real solutions, and one of them is the federal government should get the hell out of health care and let the states do it. And like Vermont's going to try a universal single payer system, And if it works well, then New Hampshire can adopt it. If it bankrupts the state of Vermont, we can say, and we can point at them, which is
Right.
what we should do.
Right. Supposedly, what Huntsman did in Utah has been pretty successful, but I don't know.
I don't know enough
I don't know
about
too
it.
much about it, but I know there's no
I
mandate.
actually flew to Utah to look at their system, believe it
really?
or not. Yeah, several months ago. I was hosted by Senator Niedermeyer out there, as well as Mr. Clark. He was the former Speaker of the House out there, David Clark, that was his first name. And they were architects of the Utah system, which is basically an exchange. Exchange has become a dirty word under President Obama to those that are conservative, but Utah did it before President Obama had even been elected. And their reasoning behind setting up an exchange is
What is
they
it?
wanted...
Explain what an exchange is.
Oh.
An exchange is a marketplace that the government helps create where insurance can be bought and sold. And the main driver of why Utah did an exchange before healthcare reform was contemplated was they wanted what they call a defined benefit system. And what that means, defined contribution system. What that means is they wanted employers, rather than saying to their employees, I'm giving you Blue Cross Blue Shield, or I'm giving you Harvard Pilgrim, or I'm giving you Cigna. Instead of that, they wanted a system where the employer said, I'm giving you $200. Go get what you want through this exchange system.
Okay.
And the government created a system where for those dollars, the person was able to pick from multiple carriers. So working at one company, the person you're working next to could have Cigna, but you have Harvard Pilgrim, and things were different and so forth, but it was a defined contribution system. So with that as a backdrop, they went to private carriers and said, you need to promulgate the kind of rules that would take to make this work and so forth. And they're just kind of getting it off the ground now. They did institute an individual insurance system several years ago, but they've only begun to fully implement a small employer system. So it is kind of a model. In fact, most people feel that when you come to the subject of exchanges, that the two bookends are Utah, which is extremely free market in their approach, and Massachusetts, which is extremely centralized in their approach. Vermont, of course, is this outlier because they're now going down a road that really nobody's ever tried before.
Yeah, but there's no mandate in Utah, correct? Unlike
There is
Massachusetts?
no individual mandate as of yet. Now, whether they contemplate that or not, I don't know. But they definitely don't have an individual mandate. And there's a fella out there, and if you Google him, his name is Norman Thurston. He was really the architect of this. He was very generous with his time with me. He spent hours and hours really helping out. Not myself, just myself. There was actually representatives from, I believe, 33 states went to a kind of a conference out there to look at what they were doing. And
A lot
and I
of
attended
dancers
that.
and dancers and
No, they didn't have that. They didn't have that. But they did. But what they do have is, like I said, a very free market approach. But I will say there are some things about the state of Utah itself that are not necessarily a good translation to New Hampshire. One of those things is that they really have two dominant healthcare systems. Just like in our state, Dartmouth-Hitchcock is a dominant system. It has a lot of providers and a big hospital and so forth. They have a couple of systems out there that compete that both have about 50% of the population. So it lent itself to a competitive market somewhat better than our system does. We are really largely dominated in insurance by Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. They have almost 2/3 of the market of the state of New Hampshire. So they really dominate our market, and that presents a set of difficulties, quite frankly. And we're a small population state, as is Utah, but we are a small population state, and quite frankly, the problem with a small population state is that if you segment it too much, you create what I call risk puddles instead of risk pools, and that can be problematic as well. Every state has its uniqueness, its challenges. I think that as much as I disagree with a single-payer approach, I'm really glad they're trying it in Vermont. That's a good state to be a laboratory for that because it's small. You certainly wouldn't want to see New York or California necessarily pull that off. That could be disastrous. But it's a good little microcosm of laboratory, if you will.
Yeah, and
And so we'll see what happens. Whether I'm right or wrong, I think it's not going to work, but I could be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's just it. That's why I advocate that the federal government shouldn't do it. If Vermont tries it and it works, we can try it. If the thing in Utah is an experiment, in the federal level, if they allowed actual real competition as far as medication, I think we could bring down the medication costs
Sure. Absolutely.
easily.
Yeah.
You know, once you get rid of the stranglehold companies like Pfizer have on the country, the prices are going to go down.
Right.
And there's a lot of things like that we could do. I think, you know, if people had to pay a percentage of procedures as opposed to, I'm coming in here for this, even if it's a small percentage, they might start looking into how much is this procedure going to cost.
Right.
Instead of, yeah, why don't you give me an MRI and a CAT scan and a head transplant
The
while you're at
further
it.
the further you divorce the payer from the procedure, the worse cost inflation is going to be. That's easily documented through the 30 or 40-year history of commercial insurance and Medicare as we know it. There's no question that if you go back to the 60s when commercial insurance really exploded through the Blue Cross systems and Medicare came on the scene in 1965, that was the beginning of our healthcare inflation problem because you for the first time divorced the payer from the procedure. Prior to that, people simply paid their medical bills out of pocket and they knew what things cost and it kept things in check. And when you think about it, think about dental. Dental insurance is not nearly as widespread as medical insurance, and we don't see the kind of inflation in the dentist office that we have in medical.
Right.
You know, people, because again, the consumer has to, in a sense, be sold. Hey, I think this is the procedure you need. I know it's a little bit expensive, but this is what's best for you. And because they're spending their dollars largely, I'm not saying, I mean, half the population does have dental insurance, but a big half doesn't.
Right.
They are not divorced from that equation.
Has anybody tried, oh yeah, that was what I wanted to finish the statement before Bobby called, was I was told early on, and it's basically along the lines of that, is if you really wanted to fix the healthcare system, all you had to do was get rid of insurance entirely.
There's some truth to that. I mean,
I
even though I'm in the business, I believe that insurance should really be only for the catastrophic loss. That it should not be to be used for the day-to-day procedures. People should be paying for their own office visits, their own prescription drugs, and so forth. It's really insurance should step in when you have that heart attack, when you have the cancer. You know, those big dollar claims that it really would be difficult to afford yourself. That's the risk that should be spread. But the day-to-day expenses of your health care really should be paid out of pocket. And I personally have the kind of insurance that does that. I have what's called a health savings account, which high deductible medical insurance, and then you save money on the side to pay those day-to-day bills. And but still, even though I think that's a solution, it's not totally consumer-oriented because of the story I told you about not being able to find out what things cost up front to begin with.
Well, yeah, but if everybody's on that system, it would be. In fact, I'm sure there would be doctors that opened up practices. I mean, if you go into a doctor's office right now, you'll have the doctor, and he's got staff all over the place, and a huge percent, I don't know what the overhead is, but a huge percentage is just people to fill out all the stupid paperwork. And if you just went in there and says, you know, my leg wicked hurts, you know, I don't know what I did this, and this, and you just saw the doctor and gave him $50, he'd make more money, and, you know, you wouldn't need the, the 25 duplicates of
Well,
paperwork.
even the settings now that we have, I mean, one of the jokes we have in insurance circles is how many waterfalls does it take to take an appendix out? I mean, hospital lobbies have become looking like the Ritz-Carlton. And as you know, in the legislature, we took a fairly dim view. We had to cut the budget, and one of the things we looked at was hospital reimbursement by the state. And they were very upset with us, but we had to make some hard choices, and we started to look at the facilities, and we started to look at CEO pay and other pay. And it was actually the governor who first in his budget last year proposed that, hey, we need to take a look at this and cut things back, and the Republicans followed through with that. And I think, the negative side is we've seen some hospital layoffs, but maybe the positive side is maybe that was fat on the bone that needed a little prodding to move along.
Yeah.
I know in the years that I've been in the legislature, one of the things that's always kind of got under my skin is, and it doesn't matter who it is, you start cutting and they start crying about how they don't have any money, but you never see the CEOs take a cut in pay.
Right. Of course.
You never see
yeah.
the top of the food chain there say, well, we really don't need 25 vice presidents. Let's get rid of 10 of them.
Yeah.
It's always the guy making $2 an hour. They say, well, we got to get rid of him. We don't need more, chimney sweeps or
Right,
something.
exactly.
It's horrible. But I'm glad you're up there.
Yeah,
Let's see. We got to wrap it
We
up.
gotta wrap up. Yeah. It's about that time. Goes
Is that
by
literal?
fast.
Is that literally wrap it up?
Yeah, we're gonna wrap some fish.
We're
after
gonna
the
wrap
show.
some fish.
Well, I'm glad we made it through an hour without you pulling the pin on that grenade.
Oh, thank God! Another week.
I thought if Bob called one more time, it was.
I sit here in terror for an hour every week.
I
just,
can- I can imagine.
Hoping nothing goes wrong.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if they should allow these on college campuses.
I'm not going to take that one.
No.
Me neither.
That's for the next
We'll
next
let that
guest.
marinate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
next guest.
Oh, boy. Okay, so anyway, thank you very much, Senator. Senator Ray White from Bedford. If he runs again, vote for him again. He's doing a great job up there, and thank you very much for being here,
Yeah, thank you, Ray.
especially at the last minute.
Yeah.
You can next time we each see DJ, you can pop him in the eye or something. Let's see. Next week we have the possible next governor of the state of New Hampshire.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
From Manchester. Brain cramps. I get brain cramps. all the-
Ovid Lamontagne,
Ovid
perhaps?
Lamontagne,
Yeah, Rick Perry
yes.
disease.
I know, it's cotton picking horrible. I get that all the time. That's why when I saw Rick Perry thing, I says, whatever.
Right.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But we got Ovid Lamontagne's running for governor. He's going to be in here next week, and that should be a good show. We're going to ask him all kinds of hundreds of questions. Show the hand grenade. See what he thinks about my hand grenade. Let him, maybe I'll pull the pin next week. I don't know. Thank you very much, Matt. You're all
Thank you,
right.
Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Have a good night, folks.